Hey guys, welcome to the Wild Bit Show. I'm Upamanyu,
And I'm Meghna.
and we have got a great show planned for you. Um, First of all, we'd like to apologize for a slight delay. There was some technical issues on our end, and something that was very stubborn and wasn't wanting to go away. So apologize for that. But other than that, as far as the topics are concerned, we have our headline topic with us, which is basically about bats and how they're being linked to Ebola. Now we have this, tendency to blame our, fellow animals, especially the ones that are not very appealing looking to us. And we tend to blame them with all these different diseases. Sometimes these are true, but more often than not, it might be a figment of our imagination. We'll discuss on that particular side of things. That's our headline topic. And other than that, there is a very cool news about, or not cool, but like very interesting news about um, India's climate future. We will also have a little discussion on that. And then on the other hand, we'll talk about the other extreme where US is planning to axe its ocean monitoring systems and leaving the world flying blind. So these are the few topics we will cover, and there are some more that Meghna will cover. Meghna, what are those?
Yes. So obviously today you will only be hearing me, not seeing me. Issues are real in some places. Today we will be also talking about how a new study is suggesting that Ethiopia's protected areas may be impacting global well-being. So if there's something what overconservation. So we're going to be talking about that and how it impacts people. We're also going to be talking about how the rising seas could drown the mangroves and release vast stores of carbon because mangroves are carbon storage plants. Apart from that, we will also be talking about how people in Bangladesh are fearing that next world will be over water. And as opposed to that, how AI data centers are growing in number and are misusing or overusing water. So we will talk about how that's a big issue.
Mm. Um, so I think we can get started with the headline topic of this week. This is a piece of news from Mongabe, and it says evidence linking bats to Ebola inconclusive. Solution is not fear, scientist says. The DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, is grappling with a new Ebola outbreak caused by the Bundibugyo strain, for which no approved vaccines or treatments currently exist. And scientists are urgently working to develop a vaccine or treatments currently, develop a vaccine and understand the virus's natural origins and transmission pathways. Although bats are frequently suspected as the natural reservoir, bat ecologist Paul Wabala asserts there's no conclusive scientific evidence linking them to Ebola. Wabala highlights bats' vital ecological roles, arguing they are often misunderstood and unfairly stigmatized. He suggests habitat destruction poses a more significant risk for zootonic disease spillover to humans than bats themselves. The Bundibugyo strain has a 50 to 60% mortality rate and has significantly impacted great ape populations. Now, not only is it impacting humans, but the virus I'm saying, again, not linking it to bats directly, and we'll sort of discuss about that. But not only is it the virus, affecting humans populations, but it is also impacting great ape populations, and I think their population are more at risk than our own population. So just wanted to mention that. Sorry, there was an emergency alert that was, screaming on my phone. So that's why I went on mute for a second. So the discussion question here we have is that does stigmatizing bats distract from understanding Ebola's true origins and broader zoonotic diseases risks? And yeah, the answer to that is clearly yes, because while it could be bats, as this article points out, but at the same time, the are the ecologist Paul Webella has pointed out that there can be other links to this disease's spread, and one of the ones that he has highlighted or they have highlighted is um, deforestation and encroachment of these wild spaces, which makes sense because you come in contact with some things that you haven't come in contact with in like 1,000 years or whatever, and then that's kind of the recipe for trouble.
Yeah, and I think the problem with especially bats and actually any animal, like be it swine flu or any other animal, they can't defend for themselves. So they can't be like, oh, I'm not the problem for this virus. So it's very easy for us to villainize and paint them however we want to, and this happens with bats a whole lot because especially during COVID-19, there were bat colonies that were destroyed in different countries, including India, Peru, Cuba, because people just thought bats were the problem, and so they were like just culled in the markets, they were culled in the wild, and this was all only because there was a speculation that it could have come from the bats. There was a lot of controversy, and this is happening even for the current strain of Ebola. There is hardly any scientific evidence linking it to the bats, but the fear is real, and bats, just like sharks, so like bats, just like I think, let's say, what is the other animal? Sharks. So you know how sharks are always villainized. It's the same thing that's happening with the bats.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And I think the wild bats are less at risk than poses less risk than the bats that are found in these sort of wet markets, right?
I think so, yeah, because I mean, if it's with any animal, like when you keep them in very close proximity and you keep too many of them at one place, then their droppings and everything are kind of mixed, and that becomes a
Mm.
recipe for disaster. But I think that would be the same if you keep a lot of humans in a very unhygienic space. That would also be like a recipe for disaster. So it's the
And
same
I think
everywhere.
this like happens regularly in like caged hen coops and things like that also, right? Like the chicken breeding
Exactly.
farms.
That's what I'm saying. Like if you go to like slum areas or places where they like put too many humans together, if they put them in like a really unhygienic space, it would be a recipe for diseases even there. So any animal that is pooped and doesn't have space to go and poop somewhere else, and everything is at the same space, then anyway it becomes like a birthplace for diseases.
Mm. And I think it's like maybe it's the bats that are in these wet markets and we have put them there are the problems, but we are very quick to villainize sort of all bats in general, right? That's where that's where the problem lies essentially in our thinking as well.
I think it's not just our thinking; it's just how we are conditioned. So it's like sharks. Since Jaws till now, we just villainize sharks for any small. attack any small thing, even though like the percentage of sharks culling people is extremely low. But sharks are already villainized. So, like the first thing in the ocean that you think of or you fear of, or it's highly misunderstood as sharks. And it's the same with bats and diseases. So, the moment there's like a new strain of any disease that has a high mortality rate, the first thing humans want to do is, cull all the bats and blame it on the bats. And that's just how, I
Yeah,
think that's, yeah. So,
I think
I
Meghna
guess we'll have
is.
to going to say we'll also try to get him onto the show if we can.
Yeah, yeah, that's a
Can you
good
hear me?
idea. We can try it, but again, I think highlighting that point is important once more. That you know the stigma for the bats is, if we are focused on the bats, that means we are preventing ourselves or limiting ourselves from looking at other causes, as the scientist or ecologist points out, like encroachment of land, like other broader zootonic disease risk. And I think there's one more risk that is not mentioned in this article, is that what are we transferring to them, because that exchange can be two-way as well.
Yeah, and the thing is, bats are very important for their own landscape. The same
Mm.
with the sharks are important for their environment. So
I mean,
bats
they're
regulate the
like the
environment in some cases.
they're like the main
They're
pollinators in some ecosystems. Bats are like,
they're
they're
they're as well as
yeah, bats are often linked to the other problem with bats is, I think, that we didn't mention so far, is that when we think of bats, there is another stigma associated with bats, which is like the Dracula myth and the vampire myth, right? So this is like a new stigma that is being attached to these bats. So bats are already dealing with the vampire and Dracula myth, that they will suck you all your blood and things like that. But in reality, most bats are fruit eaters. So that's why they're such good pollinators and seed dispersers, because they will eat the fruit, or they will suck on the pollen, and they will sort of help the trees with pollination. So this is like the second um, stigma that we are attaching to bats, on top of the Dracula and the vampire myth.
wait. Can you hear me? Like I've tried speaking in between. I don't know if I'm audible.
Right now you are. Right now you are.
Okay, yeah. So, but with the stigma bit, if you're talking about the vampires and other things, we have to also talk about how they've been kind of glorified via Batman and the Bat Signals and the Batmobile.
True.
So, but obviously, it directly doesn't go on to bats. It's very indirectly why he's just called Batman. They don't really glorify the bats in it. They don't show the
Hmm.
bats in a very positive
Hmm.
light. So that is the problem where Batman is famous, but he's not famous for like making the bats or making the bats look like a great animal. So that is there, but I think like how Oops has said, they are seed dispersers, they are pollinators, and they are also insect population control um,
Hmm.
animals. So like they have a lot of different importance in the ecology, and I think for that reason bats need to be given their fair share of respect, and only should or any action be taken if there is conclusive evidence against them. We will
Hmm.
try to bring Paul Webala onto our podcast, but till then, stop blaming animals just because we've been socially conditioned to blame them.
One of the things you mentioned sort of sparked something in my head. I don't know if there should be or we should try and make a superhero that is like the sole savior of the wildlife world, or something like that, because all of the superheroes are primarily focused on humans and like pets. Superman has been seen, or Spider-Man has been seen, saving a few street cats and dogs, or pet dogs and cats. sometimes, but never like a tiger or like a bat, for example. Batman saving a bat, how cool would be that? Or like add like a conservation angle to the superheroes who are like named after a wild creature of some kind. I don't know. That is completely missing in these superhero tales, I feel like.
Yeah, but I think a superhero that's saving wildlife then again glorifies humans. I think it would be better if there was actually a wild animal saving wild animals, if we could
True.
make that kind of a superhero.
Yeah. Yeah. Food for thought. Food for thought. We will sort of, I think, keep following this because the Ebola seems to be spreading from the news that we are getting. But we will keep following this and report back if there is any updates to share. And as Minna said, try to bring on the scientist as well.
Yep. And so, yes, so let's get on to the next topic. Um, this one is a really interesting one. We couldn't decide if this should be the headline topic or the bats. It says a new study suggests Ethiopia's protected areas may be impacting local well being. A nature study reveals Ethiopia's protected areas significantly curbed deforestation and agricultural expansion between 2000 to 2020, so 2 decades, showcasing stronger than expected conservation success. However, this environmental achievement often comes with significant trade offs as nearby communities frequently experienced reduced food security and well being. The collaborative study assessing 25 sites found that while protected areas effectively mitigated environmental degradation despite population pressures, 12 sites showed positive environmental performance at the cost of social well being. Only 5 sites achieved win win outcomes for both nature and people, where conservation objectives aligned with local livelihoods. This suggests successful conservation requires more than just budgeting freezes, underscoring the complex challenge of balancing ecological preservation with human welfare in these critical regions. Um, and I think this was very interesting for us because obviously at this point of time, the way that the earth is really burning, we need to actually focus more on conserving and protecting. But at the same time, protecting might also mean that the locals who are sharing that space, that they actually face a problem because there is only more forest and there's very little agricultural space, and obviously the population must have been steadily increasing. So which means that there is lesser space for humans, or lesser agricultural space for humans to grow the same plants, but there are more mouths to feed. So how does that win-win actually happen?
And I think this article we have included and we wanted to include as well, as a food for thought, because I personally don't have an answer to this. What happens is, what happens if the conservation efforts in a particular area is too successful, exceeds our expectations. But again, as we can see here, that it too comes at a cost. So it feels like that, that achieving that balance is very important, as well. Now, achieving that balance would mean like we would need that balance, or the human side of the equation is something that ecologists will have to think about in cases where it's the conservation success is close to being achieved, or it has already been achieved, whatever the bar has been set. I think those critical regions should be reassessed from the human lens, um, because again,
Yeah, I
we
yeah,
wouldn't want to
or
sort of replace or displace those humans from that area.
or what the government could do is that because there are 5 sites that have achieved win-win outcomes, to see what was done right there in those five
Hmm.
sites and then replicate it for the rest of the sites where there is the social well-being has been put down or is
Mm,
not in a great place. So that, so because there are other model places or sites, the
mm,
same thing can somehow slowly be replicated. It doesn't have to be sudden. It doesn't have to be like a shock to the environment or a shock to the people. But small changes can happen, because if they have some examples, that means that their project was not completely it's, and it's great that the environment part of it is completely going well, and it's going just according to how it should. But at the same time, I think the people who have sacrificed so that the environment can thrive, those people need to be put on priority as well. Because in most places, people put themselves on priority, but in such places, like, it's the people who aren't put in priority because they're not very well off.
yeah. Um, no, but that's like what you said. That's like a great thing to hear. You don't often hear it in the conservation space. Is that the conservation winning for a change? That's like yeah. Sort of great news or great piece of information to share, right? Yeah, not every day that you hear that. While that is great, as Meghna said, like we have to sort of focus on how uh, that that is not superpowering the human side of things as well. So balance again, we don't have the answer for that. We will try and see if there is a researcher working in this space to give us more nuanced answers. But from what I can say from my understanding is that that anything if you do with blindfolds folds on can lead to such problems if you just focus on the human side of things and not on the animal side of things the problems that it causes we are already dealing with the consequences of it but the same can happen on the other extreme as well. This piece of news just goes to show that piece of fact.
Yeah, and the thing is that obviously everything and its measurable benefits and its measurable problems would only come out when something has been implemented for a long time. In this case, it's been 2 decades of this happening. So obviously, it's a very different way that the study has taken place. So this also shows other countries to be prepared. So if they're trying to like achieve their reforestation goals or their conservation goals, they need to take the humans into account, especially the humans at the periphery. This happens even in India when people are displaced. You have to make sure that the people are placed in a place where their economic well-being is not at stake. So hopefully this can happen in Ethiopia and in other places. I mean, we're extremely proud of Ethiopia for its conservation goals and how it has successfully reached that place, because I mean, Ethiopia is also a developing country. Developed countries, it's easier with their resources and everything, but Ethiopia has done that. Obviously it's not great for the people, but where applaud, where you can applaud or where applause is required, we need to applaud for that.
Hmm.
Hopefully there are better what would you say, measures taken so that the people are also happy, with the environment also being happy.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good message to you know to the people who are working in that area. Congratulations, and also sort of looking at starting to look at the human side as well. Yeah, because otherwise, then there could be some other consequences that humans might want to revolt or do some things that we don't want after such a conservation success. But speaking of conservation success and climate futures, this next topic, uh, this next topic comes from the Hindu, where it's titled "Funding India's Climate Future: The Trillion-Dollar Question." India faces a significant finance challenge, requiring 2.5 trillion by 2030 for its NDC's 10.1 trillion for net zero by 2070. 2070, decarbonizing key sectors like steel, cement, power, and road transport needs an additional 467 billion by 2030, 54 billion annually. The private sector will not lead these efforts without strong regulatory incentives and policy support, as green alternatives are currently uneconomical. International climate finance is insufficient. Developed nations missed their 100 billion annual pledge, and Baku's 300 billion by 2035 is inadequate. The RBI estimates India needs an additional 2.5% of GDP annually for green financing. Crucially, India must develop a clear national financing strategy and institutional mechanisms to mobilize capital at scale, as global aid will not bridge the substantial gap. Um, this kind of makes me sad to read this, that, um, again, this is a precarious situation. Like, how can we solve this finance gap? Because conservation needs money, and that's something that we tend to forget sometimes, and I'm guilty of that as well. Trying to forget that conservation actually requires tons of money.
I think the thing is that conservation obviously needs money, but you have to think about if conservation is important for you and how important is it for you. So right now we obviously feel like, oh, the environment is fine, the environment is able to like regulate itself, it's not such a big problem, and everything will be great. But then once like situation gets really bad, then that is when we would start kind of shifting our budget. So right now, like we have the what would you say? We have kind of the privilege of having a budget for the army. We have a budget for the people. We have budget for everything, but we put environment at the last of the hierarchy of priorities. But let's say that if we had no money, if we had like the environment was in a full crisis and we had to put in money there, then what would we do? We would actually take that our budget out of our defense and other places and put it into the environment. And that is where I think it's lacking at the moment, right? Like right now we would focus on a lot of human based things, like defense and everything. We don't really need to fight. At the end of the day, it's one planet, but we would still have most
No,
of our.
Meghna, but the reality is that we will fight. Without sanctioned violence, we cannot control human society. That is just the truth.
Yeah, but the
Like,
point is,
that is the reality of it. Like, if we cannot be naive about it and say that, we should stop these things, because it can't be stopped. Otherwise, it will be mayhem. Like,
true,
that
but
is
but
my thing. Like, we
but
can't
I
say
think
that humans, you can
the
go
thing is,
without food or water or electricity. In fact, we can't say those things, but
yeah,
we
but
also
but
still
what
need
I'm
a 2.5%
no, but we can
extra.
no, but we can obviously say, like oops, think about it this way: when the world is dying, are you going to care about fighting with each other or just surviving? So the problem
I
is
think
right
so.
now
No,
also,
I
if all
think we are going
countries,
to worry
no,
about fighting with each other. Like, if Pakistan is at our throats, at India's throats, are we going to sit back and say we are funding green revolution? Then the society will erupt in mayhem. If the other country is not bothered, and say, if the world, that's the whole point. Like, there are certain mindsets in people where I'm like, I am dying, that's fine, I will take everyone with me. There are certain people like that, and groups of people like that, maybe even countries like that.
but I think countries need to come together and start prioritizing, because there is no other way to finance climate by not prioritizing climate. So the same budget that you would have, there needs to be some portion given to the climate now. Maybe it wasn't something that was accounted for earlier, but now it needs to be accounted for. That is the need of the hour. So how else do you think that there's a better way of budgeting? There has to be some better way. Like we can't start increasing our GDP magically, and we can't start getting funding magically. So there has to be a better way of just budgeting what we have already.
I think um my guess here is we have to the government has to incentivize, not incentivize people, maybe, make certain uh, sweeping decisions, or take certain votes, and take certain, if in democratic countries especially, I'm speaking about in India specifically, that take certain the votes of the people, and say that how can we curb down, or reduce the consumption of electricity. So, sorry, not electricity, of fossil fuels and things like that. But again, as I'm saying that, as I think about it, that too will require money. Investing in alternate sources of energy. Everything at the end of the day will require money, and I defense budget is something I don't know any if any country will be willing to cut down on. And I practically don't have a strong opinion that they should or should not. So that's one area that countries spend a huge deal of money on. The other area that we spend a huge deal of money on is space and research, so which is sort of closely linked with defense as well, where you research about new weapons and things like that as well. So research and development we spend a lot of money in. That also, I don't know if that could be cut. Like when I look at the list of things that we spend the most on, typically not we as in any specific country, but we as in any country. They have these 10 items that every country will spend on, and I don't see uh, a very easy thing that we could sort of curb on to fund this
No, but
green
I think, I mean,
energy.
no, but you think about it this way. You think about it this way. We're actually living on planet Earth right now. Okay.
Hmm.
We have to live here only. So there are two,
Hmm.
three ways to do it. Obviously, optimistically or realistically is different, but all countries need to prioritize climate, one. Second, space research can go on, but it doesn't have to be the priority, or it doesn't have to be something that you spend billions on. You don't have to be in the space race of who sends the first satellite out to the moon, or who sends the first satellite out to Jupiter. We don't need to have that kind of race, because there's enough that is unexplored on this earth, and enough that is unexplored and has to be protected on this earth. So those kind of budgets can definitely be changed. Third, like how it says in the article, that that the government needs to give strong regulatory incentives to the private sector, change its policy so that the private sector are also forced, just like how CSR is forced onto the private sector companies. So they should be forced to somehow put in money for decarbonizing, their sectors. So these are two, three ways it can be achieved. It is possible, but it's just not convenient enough for people at the moment. So that is why they don't want to do it. When it gets inconvenient, you will put climate on the top. That's just how it will be.
I don't know if I'm sure about, like, that, like, by reading this and, like, looking at the state of the world, I am sounding a little bit pessimistic right now. But I I am not sure about that. Like the Paris agreement has gone on for how long? The it has gone on for decades now, and there has been no, or very little. There has been some. I wouldn't put it in a zero category, that there has been no change, but very little change in
Yeah,
that
but
space.
oops, obviously, because oops, right now we don't want to prioritize it. The point is that people have to, and countries have to start thinking what they want to prioritize. Right now, at this point of time, they want to prioritize defense. They want to prioritize space research. They want to prioritize everything else like economic growth, but they don't want to prioritize climate. It's all about priority. And I think we
Yes,
can keep
but what
looping.
will be that point? And you are saying that there will come a point where the countries will be forced to prioritize climate.
Yeah, that just like how COVID-19, where we were prioritized, we were forced to shut down, we were forced to make some amendments. So only when we come into a situation like that, forced by the climate to make changes, only then will we make changes, and that will be too late.
I think so too. Like I think especially the popular writing and the storytelling in this space. By storytelling, I mean the movies and the podcasts and all the fiction that has been written and performed in this space of like climate doom is largely been that the climate is absolutely and royally destroyed, but at the same time it is you know um it's still, people are fighting, people are um trying to encroach on each other's lands, and climate becomes the last priority. Of course, I feel that way for some reason. I don't know, that's the position I'm sort of taking today. I'm feeling a little bit pessimistic about this, but we will have an eye on this particular issue, because yeah, money seems to be the number one thing that any sort of um, initiative in the conservation space requires.
Yeah, I think it's like one of those topics that you can keep talking and it will just keep looping back to the same thing. But we should probably like then switch to the next topic, because this
Mm,
is something that we'll just keep saying the same thing over and over
mm,
again. Okay. Mm. Uh, our next Actually, I'll do this first. There are two topics that are kind of linked to each other. The first is I fear people will go to war over water. As wells run dry, farmers struggle to survive in Bangladesh. Farmers in Bangladesh Barand region face an existential crisis as vital groundwater aquifers rapidly deplete. This naturally arid area, once transformed into a productive agricultural belt by deep tube wells, is now experiencing severe water stress. Decades of intensive extraction, coupled with the escalating climate emergency and erratic rainfall, have led to a collapse of the region's water system. Farmers like Muhammad Asif and Atar Rahman report having to dig wells much deeper, yet still struggle to find adequate water for irrigation and even drinking purposes. This extreme scarcity makes farming increasingly expensive and unreliable, pushing families towards an uncertain future. A growing fear of social unrest and potential conflict over dwindling water resources is now palpable, threatening the very fabric of rural lives across parched Bangladesh. And with this, there is another topic which is exactly the opposite. It says AI to double data center power and water consumption by 2030, UN researchers say. UN researchers predict data centers will double their power and water consumption by 2030 due to surging artificial intelligence demand, warning of significant environmental consequences. A report from the United Nations University Institute for Water, Environment and Health on Wednesday highlighted that AI's rapid rollout could strain scarce land resources, escalate electronic waste, and dramatically increase global carbon emissions unless governments intervene. Last year, data centers consumed 448 terawatt hours of electricity globally, with AI accounting for a fifth, and 4.5 trillion liters of water. By 2030, these figures are projected to reach 945 terawatt hours, 40% from AI, and 9.3 trillion liters of water, alongside 399 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions. The land footprint is also expected to be more than double. While AI offers efficiency gains, the race for growth prioritizes speed over sustainable practices, driving overall resource demand higher. So these are two articles, and they're stark opposite. There is one place where people are struggling even to survive, have water just to water their agricultural plants, to drink, to live, and on the other side, AI is all in place to double its data center power and water consumption. So that mismatch between developing and developed countries, technology and people, this is going to be the next thing that we go to war over. It's going to be for water.
Mm. This is a Yeah, this is again one of those topics where um, technology and the developed nations will be like people with money will be at a better position than the poor people, which is the case in every sector. But this is a new threat to that status quo because um, all the billionaires have data centers now and some sort of AI companies now. And if the water wells dry up in their own countries, they will probably be importing water from these other developing nations like Bangladesh, and that will mean that the farmlands on Bangladesh will run dry. Now, in the capitalistic world we have created, how do we mitigate that? Again, this comes back to the same question of that: can anything supersede sort of the capitalism, and what is there a breaking point even where
I think
this can
I
supersede?
for Bangladesh's problem and the people and the decades of extracting the water, I think there's only so much that the tube wells can also fill back. And if it is actually an arid region, then it probably doesn't get as much rainfall. So as for Bangladesh, there has to be a better solution now, maybe rainwater harvesting or other ways that Bangladesh's water table can be restored. But there has to be more what would you say more sustainable ways of doing it. But as for the AI, I think actually, oops, if you've actually spoken to people, even with Claude, there is a lot of capping that is going on because the budgets that companies have for AI and other tech related, budgets that the tech companies have, they're running dry in 4 months out of the 12 months budget. So they don't have that amount of budget itself to sustain AI. So I don't know, like AI seems to be like a very big, glorious bubble, but it is so expensive, um, even to like hire it and to run it. So I don't know how sustainable and how long would we be able to carry on with AI.
I am all for it. I am all for it. But with the recent economic, you know, advance sort of economic developments that are happening with some recent IPOs, and they're becoming a person who becomes the trillionaire now, and things like that. And some AI companies like actually reporting profits in this quarter. Um, I was hopeful that this turns out to be a bubble, but apparently it's not. Bangladesh's problem, I think they have to take something from inspiration from the Gulf, and how the Gulf solely survives on purifying seawater, and solely, like, exclusively survives on that because they don't have, like, they have zero groundwater. So Bangladesh's problem is can be solved relatively easily with science, I think. But why would they go over war? Like, the only reason the countries will go over war over water is that people are trying to steal water from each other. That is the only reason people will go to war for. Why else?
But that is what they're saying, that because there is no water, then people
Mm,
will fight over it. So this is actually one of the cases that a lot of places in India, also like Andhra and Telangana, were split over water disputes of where the river flows and who has the right over that water. So
mm.
it's a very real thing that people fight over it, and with the scarcity it's going to be a bigger fight because water is something that is essential. You need it to survive. So you would go to death, like for it. It's similar to how in COVID you really needed those oxygen tanks to save people that you loved. So you went to war with other people over getting a tank for your loved ones, and it's going to be the same with water going forward. because one, we're not harvesting water very well. So like rainwater harvesting is something that in a lot of places where it rains, you can harvest it very beautifully, and it can go back into your water table, and you would have that supply. But we're very inefficient in that. And secondly, the way that climate change is accelerating, the seas would go up, there would be lesser glaciers, there would be lesser fresh water. So water scarcity is going to be a real problem. And with AI and the kind of consumption it has, I honestly don't know where we would go. Though I think there was an article, and uh, somewhere where they said in China, I think they put a whole data center into the ocean, and they put it with like such a casing that the water doesn't enter into the data center, but their AI data center doesn't need cooling anymore because it's already inside the ocean. Did you hear
Yeah,
about that
but
one?
that begs the question that how the ocean is being warmed, and such if such data centers are put left, right, and center in the ocean, then I don't think the temperatures will continue to remain where it is in the ocean. So it is like a double-edged thing. I think the water problems is relatively easily solved. I'm not too worried about that, but because Gulf countries are doing it and have done it for decades now. They just harvest water, salt water, and they purify it and make it into potable water. So that is not a problem that I feel like is a huge problem at this point. But the data center and the AI drinking and guzzling all the water uh, is kind of a big problem.
Yeah,
Because AI requires far more cleaner water. Computers require far more cleaner water. Like they require distilled and pristine water than humans.
I think there needs to be a way that we have to cap on AI, and I mean companies are capping because of budgets, not because they don't want to use AI.
Mm.
But AI in itself does seem like a bubble at the moment, a glorious bubble, but it does seem unsustainable. It's the same thing like how cryptocurrency is, right? Because it's running on servers, so it's not as sustainable as you would. Um, what would you say, like as it is advertised. So it's the same thing with, I think, AI as well. Like
But
cryptocurrency, they want
cryptocurrency is
you.
going on now for like 13 years, 13
It
plus years,
is.
15 plus years.
Yeah, but they wanted to make cryptocurrency like the main currency. At one point of time, they wanted everything to run through like bitcoins and other kind of things. But that is not possible because cryptocurrency is not sustainable either. They have huge servers that are running that currency. So if you compare it to other ways of how we pay, like through our even through digital mediums or through cash, that is more sustainable environmentally. It doesn't require servers to run. Requires servers to run probably on a digital mode, but not as much as the cryptocurrency, how it's run 24 hours.
Um, Yeah, I mean, again, I would be the happiest if AI turns out to be a bubble. I have been generally in opposition of AI, especially for the creative and sort of the non-machine side of things. I've been, extremely opposed to AI, especially like writing poems and creating artworks and things like that. I certainly hope it is a bubble, but with how the economics are shaping out, and how much funding still is going into AI, I doubt it'll continue for another few years at the very least.
True. I think we'll have to see how things go, but hopefully, the water scarcity doesn't come at the cost of people living and people not having water to drink. So it shouldn't be. It shouldn't come to a time that that AI is what we're worshipping and AI is what we want all the
Hmm.
resources to go to,
That.
because this is kind of how humans kind of came into agriculture as well. Like they thought that they were taming the wheat, but the wheat was taming them, because the wheat
Hmm.
was like, oh, this is too hot for me, so they would find like shade for it. Oh, I have insects, so they'd find pesticide. Oh, I'm thirsty, so they would like make these irrigation canals. So it's the same thing with AI. Now AI is demanding, and we're trying all the different ways to kind of satisfy it. So it was similar to how we kind of got into agriculture. We thought that we were taming it, but
Hmm.
the truth is that the wheat that time and the AI right now is taming us. So we need to see how far we can go with something like this.
Hmm. Um, you know, the other area that we are talking about today is the US ban on ocean monitoring systems. So that's our next topic, that we will be talking about today. So this is news from The Guardian. Scientists warn Trump plan to axe ocean US ocean monitoring systems will leave world flying blind. Scientists warn that Trump administration plan to dismantle the US Ocean Observatories Initiative OOI will severely degrade global weather and El Nino predictions, leading to significant economic consequences. The vital observation system, a major component of global network, provides critical data for understanding the climate crisis. Marine ecosystems are forecasting storms and tropical cyclones. Experts from Europe and the US state that decommissioning the OOI would cause a massive increase in error in annual ocean heating estimates and dangerously compromise early warning systems for natural disasters. The OOI, by the US National Science Foundation, employs seafloor systems, underwater gliders, and moored platforms to study marine heat waves, harmful algal blooms, earthquakes, and ocean acidification. Its removal would be severe blow to global climate and ocean monitoring efforts, leaving the world flying blind on crucial data. Um, this I don't know what's going on with the US. It seems to be taking decisions in its that sometimes is in its own, not in its own benefit. Um,
Yeah, but I think that's been Trump even in his first um season, and in his second season he doesn't care about the environment. We know that, we've seen his statements regarding climate change and global warming. So he doesn't care about it, he doesn't think it's real. And secondly, I think he probably knows that he's probably going to live for another 10 max 20 years, so he doesn't need to be bothered so much about the environment if he can get his money and if he can get his profits and if he can make his other business buddies happy, um, at whatever cost it is. So at this point of time he doesn't care about the environment, and that is why every week we have one news. And it's I mean, I think the US should be ashamed at some point of time, one, for electing someone like him into presidency, and two, that it's a developed nation and it has the resources and the capability to focus on environment and be like a leader to show other countries, like it can be an example. But rather it is just sad that other countries have to just keep seeing how it's cutting it its own throat, like like chopping its own fingers kind of thing.
mm, mm. The but sadly, the technologies that US has developed and deployed, um, sort of are being used by other countries globally as well, and that's where the whole problem here comes in as well. It's not only impacting the US in terms of what it's losing by decommissioning these kinds of systems, but it's also impacting other countries who are dependent on this critical system. And I think that was one of the promises of when sort of US came into power after the Second World War. That was one of the promises that the US made, and the world agreed to it, with some safeguards in there, that these critical systems are for international use, and everyone is funding it. It's not that just the US is funding it. US might be funding the main chunk of it, but it's not only US that is funding it. And this is for use of the entire world. These are like the humanitarian, um or the human impact technologies, and I feel like this should be kept completely separate from war, conflict, and other things. Like, one can go wrong, but the others has to stay stable, because otherwise, not only the US but everyone else is losing out on these technologies. And this is a critical thing that we will have to deal with more and more, where one of these countries is controlling a majority of these technologies. And how do we ensure that these technologies just don't go away? um, yeah.
That is true, but I honestly, I think the thing is, at this point of time, Trump probably thinks that these kind of systems are not helpful to the humans, but at the end of the day, these monitoring systems are something that wants us, that gives us information so that we can protect the environment, or we can protect ourselves from things like the El Nino predictions and different global weather things, and other heating and algal blooms and other problems that are arising in the ocean and that can impact us. So the day I think Trump understands that this is eventually going to impact him and everyone else, that is the day that he might actually do something for the environment. But as I said, he probably thinks that, like, I mean, he has only a few years left, so he doesn't really need to care about the environment.
Mm, mm. Again, we'll keep an eye on this topic. We will see how this pans out. Right now, it seems a little precarious, a precarious situation there. Hopefully, this is turned on again, and the monitoring system are left for the world, because climate predictions are very important in agriculture and other things as well. So, um, yeah, we'll keep following this topic, but right now that's what we have to say about this particular piece of news.
Yes, I think I'll just give a very short, a quick update on the Canada's um, beluga whales that we've been talking about for a long time. Plan to relocate 30 beluga whales. Canada has endorsed a plan to relocate 30 beluga whales from the embattled Marineland Amusement Park in Niagara Falls, Ontario, following a tentative deal that ends a protracted public saga. Marineland had previously threatened to euthanize the whales by 2025, but they will now be moved to aquariums in Spain or the US. Specifically, Oceanographic Valencia in Spain and a consortium of American aquariums in Georgia, Chicago, San Diego, and San Antonio have agreed to take them. This landmark decision effectively concludes whale captivity in Canada. Animal rights groups who have long criticized the whale's living conditions view the relocation as the least worst option. Marineland itself effectively closed to visitors in 2024. While permits require finalization, a rescue plan is emerging with complex logistics involving health checks and fabric slings through an exact timeline remains. Though I think you guys know how we've been following this for a lot of episodes, and this is where
Mm,
it's reaching. We thought that the belugas might be relocated to the beluga sanctuary that was made in Canada, but sadly, it's not being relocated. They're not being relocated there, but they will be moved to aquariums in the US. Makes more sense because it's still a shorter distance for them, so they would not be as stressed out. But to Spain, I'm not sure, but at least they're not being culled, because in between they were going to be euthanized or culled. So I think in some ways it's a positive news,
mm.
right? Oops.
Yeah. No, I feel like that. Um, Hopefully that transfer, the you know relocation effort goes smoothly. Um,
Goes smoothly.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we will keep you updated of where they're being. Eventually where they'll be moved. Yes.
Mm, mm.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay. What's the next topic? Oops.
I think there is an interesting small topic um, on our script there that I would cover, is that octopuses use mirrors to find food they cannot see. Now we know octopuses are intelligent, but We are still discovering how intelligent they can be. This is from Science Daily, and it says octopuses, known for their intelligence, have demonstrated a new sophisticated ability, learning to use mirrors to locate hidden food. Research, excuse me, researchers at Dartmouth found that octopuses can understand how reflections relate to their environment, a skill previously documented only in vertebrates. In a study involving California two spot octopuses, the animals were trained to associate a mirror's reflection with a concealed food source. They learned to use this visual information to navigate and find their prey, requiring them to process spatial relationships and understand the reflected image represented a real object, not directly visible. This groundbreaking research, published in Current Biology, reveals a remarkable cognitive capacity in invertebrates, highlighting their complex spatial reasoning skills. Yeah, for anyone that's not could not quite understand, the analogy I'm using in my head is, how we have mirrors to navigate when we drive a car. This is like similar to that.
Yes, and I think the thing is, for people who do not know, octopuses or octopi are extremely intelligent animals. If you've seen the Octopus Teacher, or if you've you do you remember Paul the octopus that used to tell which team is going to win the football match? So octopus are extremely intelligent animals, but it's just that we do not give them enough credit. Just because one, we do not interact much with them. Two, we do not have them in our surroundings. So we don't know how intelligent they are, and people tend to eat octopuses, tend to eat a lot of animals. All animals are intelligent, but octopuses are showing us that they're capable of so much more.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I think very interesting piece of news, gives us a deeper understanding into our own evolution of our own intelligence, and yeah, that's all we had to say about that topic.
Yes, I think I'll do one last small topic so that we can kind of end, because we have to end today at around 1. Um, this is despite oil spills in Nigeria's mangrove forest, Shell continued operations, documents show. New documents from a lawsuit reveal Shell leadership knew a Nigerian pipeline posed a significant pollution risk but continued operations. International communications from as early as 2008 indicated the Nembe Creek trunk line was in poor condition, operating outside technical standards. Despite proposals to shut it down, a senior executive decided to keep pumping oil. Locals in Bele have reported that oil spills between 2011 and 2013 linked to illegal connections and sabotage devastated thousands of hectares of mangroves and aquatic life, destroying their fishing livelihood. Satellite imagery confirms extensive environmental degradation around the village. Now this is one of those ways where you see that capitalism and greedy private companies, what they can do, even though they were told that there's a significant pollution risk. They continued the operations. The oil spilled. They kept pumping oil, and it's led to the probably the death of a lot of aquatic creatures and of the mangroves. And the sad part is, oops, like even if they get punished now, what good is it, right?
Yeah, I mean, and especially for a company like Shell, as big as it is, but like, how can you punish them? Like, is there any way you can punish them? A few $1 million of fine would doesn't mean anything for such a big company.
That is absolutely true. I honestly don't know what would actually make them change, but there needs to be some way that these greedy capitalist companies can be put, like on trial, and they have some great consequences, so they stop doing these kind of greedy things that affects the environment this badly.
Mm. Here's to hoping that I sorry, I'm just feeling very pessimistic today. But I do hope that there is some mechanism or some type of um, intervention that the government or the people can do to stop these companies from doing such continued atrocities towards nature.
Absolutely. But right now, this is how the earth is, and that's how it's shaping. But we're hoping that there are better, policy and better, like there's the stricter regulation when such kind of things are illegal. And hopefully, there's like more than just $1 million fine. There's like a repercussion for them to not be able to invest again or something like that. But we'll keep you updated on that as well. Um, since we are closing, it's time for my message as usual. So, um, yeah, so with regards to water consumption and AI, did you ever give it a thought that your little query of, polishing my email or polishing my query or writing this note, how much water does it actually use? Did you ever check on that? Did you ever know if you actually need that help? But I think it would be very interesting. Please tell us in the comments if you've ever seen the kind of carbon footprint your AI searches have.
Mm. Yes, and I think we did a full episode, a full topic on that. We'll try to link it in the video somewhere as well. Just see later on. But yeah, that's sort of it for today. I think, as always, do subscribe to our channel and follow us on all the different social media platforms. We are on all the major social media platforms, and the links you will find somewhere down below. But in the ticker, you'll find all the all our handles there, and also in the description. Follow us there. We go live on all the platforms all at once, so you'll be able to find us wherever you follow us. If you are listening to a recorded version of this podcast, you can find us on any of the podcasting platform you choose to listen us on. Um, Consider leaving us a rating. It greatly helps with spreading this message and spreading not only the message but also this point of view to as many people as possible. To consider leaving us a comment just helps us with improving what we do and our show in general. But other than that, that's it for today, and we'll see you next Sunday, same time, same channel. Have a good one, guys.
Bye bye.